Hey everybody, welcome to the Nest. You see a lot of faces today. That's because I'm here with my wonderful colleague Sally, and tonight we are going to be together with an absolutely amazing group of women here. Our guests this evening are award-winning author and activist Aida Salazar, award-winning author Yamile Saied Méndez. Did I do that correctly? Too bad. Award-winning author Guadalupe Garcia McCall, author, essayist, and interfaith activist Saadia Faruqi, and award-nominated author Hilda Burgos. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe that you are all here with us this evening. Did I do okay?
You did great.
Yes.
You
Perfect.
did okay?
Yes. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you so much for coming and hanging out in the nest with us.
For anyone watching who might not be familiar with all of these faces yet, I would love to just do a quick little self-intro
go ahead.
for everybody. If anybody would like to just take a minute or two to introduce themselves and what middle grade readers might know you from or should know you from, that would be great. We can start up in my top left with Hilda.
Hi, I'm Hilda Burgos, and like everybody else here, I contributed a story to this book, Calling the Moon. I have also written 2 other middle grade novels. My first one was Ana Maria Reyes Does Not Live in a Castle, and the second one was, having a hard time figuring it, Miosotis Flores Never Forgets. I was born and raised in New York, in Washington Heights. My parents are from the Dominican Republic. All of my main characters are also Dominican Americans. And I currently live in the Philadelphia area, where I've been living for a very long time. It's where my husband and I raised our 2 grown children, and where I currently work as a lawyer. Thank you. And welcome, everybody.
Welcome, Hilda. Guadalupe, can we hear from you?
Sure. My name is Guadalupe Garcia McCall. I am an immigrant child who came to the United States in Texas, from Piedras Negras, Coahuila to Eagle Pass, Texas. I've been here ever since. I love it. I am mostly known for my first book, Under the Mesquite, which won the Pura Prey, and then for my national bestseller, Summer of the Mariposas, which is read in a lot of middle schools. My latest book is just came out, and it's called Secret of the Moon Conch. So if you get a chance, grab it. I wrote it with David Bowles. It's very exciting times.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much. Saadia, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Saadia Faruqi. I'm speaking to you today from Houston, Texas, where it's super hot, and we didn't have the power for several days because of some thunderstorm that went, insane on us. But power's back, thankfully. I've lived in Texas for more than 20 years, but I'm also an immigrant. I was born and grew up in Pakistan, which is in Asia. Lots of people don't know where that is, or think it's somewhere where it's not, but it's a cool place. I was 22 years old before I came here as a grown-up to the US, and now I've lived kind of more or less the same amount of time so far here. I write primarily for kids now, even though my early writing was for adults, and I'm most well known for the Yasmin series, which is kind of a really long-running early reader series. There are 20 books now in that series, and a lot of people know me through that. But I also write middle grade novels. There are a lot of my books, if you can see behind me. Yusuf Azim Is Not a Hero, A Place at the Table, which I co-wrote with another middle grade author, Laura Chauvin. And this year I have my first graphic novel coming out, also middle grade. So I'm really excited. This is a great time for middle grade. The last few years have been amazing, and we're still seeing so many incredible books coming out, especially reflecting the kids that read them, the identities of so many different people, like my kids who are Pakistani American, and so many other kids of different groups that really, really deserve to be seen and their experiences seen. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to kind of contribute to that in a little way.
Oh, well, we can't wait to talk more about that whole that whole topic of how many new things have come around in middle grade just in the last few years. Yamile.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Yamile Saied Méndez. I was born and raised in Rosario, Argentina. I came to the United States all by myself when I was 19 to go to college. And now I've lived here longer than I've lived in my country, but my heart is always in Argentina. I write for pretty much every age group. I have picture books, middle grade, young adult, and books for adults. And my most known books are Furia, which is a YA book, and it was also a Pura Pre medalist in 2021, and it was part of the Reese Witherspoon book club. And also my picture book, Where Are You From?, which has never really won officially any awards, but although it came out in 2019, which is so long ago in book years, it's still going strong, and I still get to talk to a lot of schools and readers about where we're all from. That's a book that came from a poem that I wrote to my children that was so specific, and it has resonated with young and old and older readers all through the world. And Calling the Moon is our anthology that Aida and I co-edited together. I also have a story that I contributed, and that story has all of my favorite things, which is girls in sports and periods. I wrote my master's thesis on the lack of representation of puberty in middle grade fiction, and that's why my obsession, where my obsession came from.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And Aida.
Yeah, I am so happy to be here again and just grateful for the work that you all do. So thank you. All of my colleagues are so amazing. I'm constantly inspired by them. So I started my career in publishing in children's literature with a book called The Moon Within. And that book was one of the first in 50 years to talk and to broach or center the idea of menstruation. Since Judy Blume's Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret. And that book taught me a lot. I didn't know it had been silenced for so long. It was actually Yamile who told me. Aida, when I asked her what other comp titles are there around for my book, she says there aren't any. I was like, what? Yeah, there aren't. And I was like, oh my God. And so that's when I learned that Yamile had done her thesis for VCFA, yes, on periods and I feel like I'm being locked out here. Okay. Anyway, and so that was really eye-opening, and it sat with me. Of course, I went on to continue to write other works, Land of the Cranes, also middle grade, that won the Americas Award, and several others. And then I published my most recent verse novel, A Seed in the Sun, a historical fiction about the 1965 Delano grape strike. Yeah. And I've done 2 picture books, In the Spirit of a Dream, and Jovita Wore Pants, a story of a Mexican freedom fighter, which is a story of my distant great aunt who dressed as a man and fought for religious freedom, sort of like Mulan.
Yeah.
And or Joan of Arc. And so I'm very excited and grateful to be able to do this kind of work. And Calling the Moon, of course, was came out of a need to continue to open up the narratives that have been silenced for so long. So I'm really grateful that all of these wonderful contributors said yes to us, because we were baby authors when we approached them. Hey, would you be interested? And they said yes, and it's just made this collection so powerful. And again, grateful to be here. Thank you.
Before we dive into just all things middle grade, I would love to talk more about this incredible anthology that you all contribute to and worked on, Calling the Moon, 16 period stories from BIPOC authors. I was saying before we started today, I reread each of your stories this morning, and man, do I wish that this book had existed when I was a kid. tell us about what it was like to all come together and create this book.
Well, I can start because I was sitting with this idea that there was not enough representation, right? And the white feminist movement had done an incredible job. If you look at how much literature there is in nonfiction,
Yes,
around periods, it's incredible. There's mountains of literature, but it's all nonfiction. None in fiction, which was so striking to me because of my own relationship to story, right? Story is so powerful, and how it teaches, how it warns, how we come to understand other people's humanity through literature. It's so powerful. And so for us to have no other representations in fiction felt very violent in many ways. You know, it's a kind of violence that patriarchy has enacted upon us, and so because of my activist spirit, and I was like, well, I can't be the only one. This can't be the only thing. And so I wrote this proposal, and I reached out to a few people, including Yamile. But again, I was a baby author, and I was like, Jami, would you help me with this? Because I don't know what I'm doing. And you know, no one other than Jami really could really understand and was as passionate about this topic as me, and at the moment, and that I knew. But then, as it turns out, there are all these other
yes,
passionate
yes.
about it too, right? So so then I'll take it. I'll let you take it from there, Jami.
Yes, and it's something that I discovered when I was doing all the research for my master's thesis, that people like to talk about periods, contrary to what people may think. You know, like, and I say people because it's not only, you know, like boys and are curious about it, and the main takeaway that I got from all that research was that the people who had better outcomes or a better relationship with their changing bodies and growing up were those who had information. And again, by not providing these stories, we were also contributing in a way for this lack of information, especially for young readers. And so, like Aida says, you know, we don't just need the one story. Our relationship to this part of life depends on so many variables. And so many voices are stronger than one. And what better way than to create an anthology that Aida and I, from the very beginning, hope that would not be, you know, the one book in 60 years to be that that voice. We wanted it to hopefully inspire other people to also talk about periods and how it, you know, influences their lives. And the other thing that in middle grade especially, we're all writing about children in this life-changing period of time. And childhood, sometimes when you're a kid, it feels forever. And as grown-ups, we know how fleeting it is. But it's in that in-between time that we all come, you know, through this transformation in different ways, that we all have something to add to the conversation. And so I think it's exciting. And even if we're not talking about periods in middle grade books, we always talk about the changes in relationships, in our vision of the world, of who we are. So in one way or another, I feel like every middle grade author talks about puberty. When we're writing middle grade, it's possible not to.
Yeah.
Sorry. Saadia, do you mind speaking a little bit about how your story came together? Because I mean, like I said, I enjoyed all of yours, but I'd love to hear.
Sure. It was very personal. But at the time I wrote the story or started thinking about what I was going to write, this topic had already come up in my family in a very startling way. My kids were now both teenagers. They were younger then. And my son is older. He was maybe in 5th grade, and my daughter was maybe in 2nd or 3rd, or around about that time. And the story, so those of you who don't know, it's titled Holiday, and it is about a Muslim girl who is going to fast for the first time during the month of Ramadan. And Ramadan is a holy month for Muslims, but one of the things that we don't do spiritually, pray or fast, is if we are on our periods, we stay away from that. And we can make up our fast later, so it's not like you miss any religious obligation. It's just that during the time of periods you don't. And Muslim women, especially traditional ones, really hide that. They will pretend to fast, and so that the men in their household especially don't know this. And it's mind-boggling to me, but I grew up in that. Everybody I know does it. It's just never ever spoken about. Outside of Ramadan too, you never talk about it. And that was the month that my period came, and I wasn't fasting, so I had taken my kids out somewhere for lunch, and I was eating, and my son, thinking he's a big know-it-all, he's like, "Oh, you're not fasting. You're a mom. You're supposed to, set a role model, and what is blah blah blah." So I sat him down. Literally, I still remember the scene. It was McDonald's place or something weird like that, and I was like, sit down right now and I'm going to tell you about something. So he stopped eating. He was grossed out, but it was something that had kind of been it had been bothering me for a while. So my poor kid, my daughter did not understand half of what it was, but I felt it was really important for my son to know this, because I did not want to raise another generation of boys who grow up and get upset at their sisters or their moms or their wives because they're not fasting or they're not performing their religious obligations because of a thing that is being hidden from them. And I don't think it's the boy's fault either. But I sat down to this 10-year-old or 11-year-old and explained all about periods and about while he's trying to eat his lunch. And then this opportunity came up really close to that. And so I kind of, maybe not really close to that. My daughter was older, so she had been kind of thinking about her period. And I think she had gotten it or just gotten it for the first time. And it was just a combination of that. I knew this is what I wanted to write about. It's that's kind of my story. That's why I wrote it. It's very personal, but also something that I feel like so many women want to talk about, especially Muslim women, when they're kind of taken out of that space because of something that nobody should feel bad about. And hopefully the story will help in that.
Absolutely. I loved the mix of stories, that it's a range of ages, it's a range of reception, for lack of a better word, girls who really want it and girls who are mortified that it's happened. Or Hilda, can you talk a little bit about yours? You've got sisters in yours, and I thought that the story between them was really interesting.
Yeah, thanks. So my story is the narrator and the main character is an 11-year-old girl who first got her period a year earlier, and her 14-year-old sister still hasn't gotten her period. And first of all, I wanted to write the story from the point of view of an early bloomer, because that's what I was. And I remembered reading Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, and feeling like, really, girls actually want their periods? Because I didn't know what it was when I got it. So I didn't write that story, but it was scary. I thought I was dying. I go to the bathroom one day and there's blood, and I rushed out to my mother and I said, "Oh my God, I'm bleeding." And she just said, "It's okay, it's okay." But she was taken aback because she wasn't expecting it to happen so soon. I have 2 older sisters, and my second sister still hadn't started. So, my mom just kind of thought, I talk to them when they're 11. That's what I do,
Yeah.
and I was 10, and she was just like, oh. So I wanted the point of view of the early bloomer, not the point of view of the girl who's dying to get her period, because I felt like it's important that those girls who feel the way that I felt, because sometimes I would just feel like, oh, this just isn't fair. You know, they would be girls talking about really wanting to go out and buy a training bra. And, you know, my mother had to say to me, you need a bra. We need to go get you some. And I was like, really? Do I have to? And so I just kind of felt like that's a point of view and that's an experience. And I'm sure that there are many girls out there who have that same experience. And I wanted their story to be told. So that was, but, you know, but then I also kind of wanted it to be sort of juxtaposed with the older sister who, you know, they're nervous because she's at an age where shouldn't she have gotten it by now? Is there a medical problem? And, you know, sort of to teach them that there really isn't anything wrong with having your period. It's actually a good thing that you already have it, even though it's a little bit sooner than you would have wanted it. So, you know, so that was I wanted to show those two parallels.
And then finally, Guadalupe, your story made me cry today. I just have to tell you that. But in addition to it being heartbreaking, there's an incredibly beautiful storyline about a relationship with a dad and first periods. Can you speak a little about that?
Yes, of course. So the story's really personal, actually. It was born from my experience. I am the oldest of 6 sisters and 2 brothers, and my mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was 14, and she was constantly off to some clinic, and she'd be gone 4 or 5 months at a time. And so the first time she left, I remember the anxiety for me of how am I going to tell my dad that we need this product? He's like a macho man, carpenter. You know, he's just such a man in my life. And I can't explain it any other way other than, does he know? Does he know about this thing? I'm 14 years old. I don't know that he knows. And so I've never seen him interact with that part of our lives. And so just going to the store with him to get the products and thinking how, well, we were getting groceries and thinking, how am I going to get to that aisle and sneak those in here? We always get the big box. And so it was such a traumatic experience for me. And on top of that, it was a hard time in our lives. We were wondering what happens if she dies. Are we going to get another mom? My dad was gorgeous and young. He was 40 years old and very, very handsome. And we could see that when we went into the neighborhood, women would come over and they were always flirting with him. And I would think, why doesn't my mother say anything? Well, she didn't say anything because she knew my father was a good man. But I wanted to capture all of that anxiety. I wanted to capture the fears of losing my mother. I wanted to capture the love that he had for us. And I wanted to capture that special moment when he took that burden off of me and he just put that box in the cart like it wasn't any big deal. And I just, in that moment, oh my God, I don't want to cry. In that moment, I saw how special my father was, why my mother loved him so much. And so, yeah, I wanted to capture all that.
Well, you did it successfully, and you're going to make me cry again. So I'm going to pass it over to Jordan for the next question while I recover for a second.
Okay.
Just listening to everybody, I'm wondering, there are a lot of authors who write self-inserts. So really, I want to know why most of the contributors to Calling the Moon, why did you choose to write your own stories rather than fiction? And if you did write fiction, fantastic. I want to know why you wrote the fiction too. But if you wrote your own story, I'd really like to hear why. Saadia, can I start with you?
I don't think it was my story. I think definitely mine was inspired by the thoughts that I had been having around this cultural taboo. But the story itself, Holiday, is made up, so definitely fiction. And I don't know. I write fiction. That's what I do. I feel like it's way more interesting than my own life. And we want to have a plot. Like all our lives are just continuous. There's no plot. There's no. I don't know. It's just I didn't want to have my own kind of personal experiences there unless I felt that it was relevant enough. I did have, similar to Hilda, my own experience personally of, oh my God, what is this? What's happening? Am I dying? Why is there all this blood? And my mom being totally ill-equipped to, explain or figure this out, how to deal with me. But yeah, I didn't want to put that in. That's too cringy for me.
Fair enough. Too cringy is okay. Elizabeth does say, my youngest has enjoyed the Yasmin series. We're going to have to make sure we read all 20. So thank you, Saadia.
Oh my God, cool. There's also a crossover coming. So this year there'll be more stories that are a cross between Yasmin and her friend Ali, who's getting his own series. So all of you people who asked me for a boy book, I finally decided it wasn't as bad of an ask as I had been thinking it was. But so yeah, thank you for reading, Yasmin.
Hilda, yours was a little bit more personal. Can we hear about it?
Well, like Saadia, I took some of my personal experiences and then put them into a work of fiction. And I did, so the character, she's an early bloomer as I was, and I took some of the feelings that I had as a child and I put them into this character. The actual events are fictional, though. I have 3 sisters, not just one, and I grew up in a 2-parent household, and her father is absent. And actually, when I first started to write the story, the father was in the story, and then just as the story kind of developed, because I have to admit that I'm a pantser, not a plotter. And as the story developed and I wanted to talk about family relationships and learning about, who you are and what things you get from your family and what things you don't, then I kind of decided that in learning those things, maybe it would be good for my character to not really know her dad and for her to start learning about her dad as well. So I start off with some personal feelings and with some personal stories, but my life really isn't that exciting. So then I just fictionalize it and turn it into what I think is a better story than if it were not fiction.
I like the additions, but it surprises me how much of a personal feeling each of these stories has, that you can tell that everybody's writing from a place of, oh, this has happened to them. Guadalupe, I'd love to hear about yours, even though it's probably going to make me cry. So I'm going to mute myself.
Well, I have, like I said, I have 5 sisters. There's 6 girls in my house. And I just thought, well, I already did that with Summer of the Mariposas. I put all the girls in there and it became like a hero's journey. And I thought, I want to limit this. I also felt like I needed to fictionalize the story a little bit so that I could get a little bit away from it and get it some distance. Um, Even though I did that, though, honestly, I cried every time I revised that thing. Like, just boohooed because I miss my dad. I miss my mom, but I miss my dad because I had him and for a very long time. So this was a way of honoring him, on honoring the fabulous, wonderful, masculine, but also gentle and sweet and kind and generous man that he was with us when he was left at the age of 42 with 6 daughters, all teenagers to raise. So God bless his soul. And I wanted to honor that. But I also wanted to depict my sisters and myself as we were when we were younger, when we didn't really know much about the world, but we think we knew. And so we painted everything with these really bright, broad strokes. and, and really, people are a lot more nuanced than that, but they weren't for us. And so I wanted to depict that time in our lives when we were discovering the world. And so I made the girls younger. I only put 3 of them in there, and if when they read this story, they'll know who they are because their personalities are just the same. So I find that when I write for middle grade especially, that I fictionalize a lot of things that happen in my life because there is a lot of food for fodder in my family with so many kids. I did want to say some news that people don't know, maybe are not aware. Summer of the Mariposas is my very wonderful, lovely, that I love it so much. When I say lovely, is I love it so much. Is my favorite book, and we just signed a 3-book deal to have 3 more middle grade novels in that series, and it's called it's going to be called Seasons of Sisterhood. So it's going to be Summer of the Mariposas, Fall of the Fireflies, Winter of the Witch Moth, and Spring of the Cicada. So I'm really excited about that. More middle grade.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Aida, I have to say, your story specifically is going to sit with me for a long time because after I read the whole of the Calling the Moon anthology, one of the things that I took away from that is how much Indigenous and cultural knowledge has been totally erased. And the access to young people from these cultural backgrounds, you mentioned this, they don't have anything. We've got, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. It's 50 years old. It's done. And these stories specifically, being own voice, and yours especially, makes me realize how much of that knowledge that we need to bring back and tap into just for the holistic and health and well-being of our kids. But I digress. Can you tell me a little bit about what specifically inspired your story? Or maybe what I got was that.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it right on the head there, because it's one of the realizations that I kind of came to. Part of the reason why I wrote The Moon Within was because I started to kind of make connections between the moon and how, it cycles 29 days, 29, 30 days, just like, those who menstruate. And so those kinds of connections are not well, they're not told, right? And we know, just scratching the surface, that our ancestors, when we lived in matriarchal societies, especially, or societies that were still patriarchal, but understood the divine duality that we carry, with masculine and feminine energies and whatnot, that this was part of life, and it is the source of life. And indigenous people used to believe that menstruation was powerful, especially in the Americas. That we were the people who menstruated were could bleed for 7 days and not die, whereas a warrior, if killed or bled for 7 days, they'd be out, right? So it was a powerful thing, and so these connections and were part of the things that I kind of came to realize. But also, what I, as an herbalist, I call myself a guerrilla herbalist because I'm not a trained herbalist, but in my family and in traditions, my mother and my grandmothers, those kinds of medicines have been passed down. And, when women menstruated, before, there were herbs and there were healing practice, actual like womb massage and these sorts of things. And of course, that has all been almost erased through colonization. And so my attempt to bring that in every story that I can, it's an act of decolonialism in many ways, to speak against these narratives that want to just give us birth control pills when we have too many periods, instead of like thinking, okay, well, what is wrong with our bodies, or what kind of herbs could heal our bodies, or what kind of medicines have we traditionally across the globe? I mean, not just in the Americas, but in indigenous people all over the world, and how they treat these kinds of ailments and the balances that we're out of balance in. And so, I mean, I could get really like deep with that stuff, but in this story, I thought it was really important to kind of like just subtly and not so subtly just introduce it as or for readers to kind of uncover a little more and to kind of think, wow, like, really? I could do a massage. Maybe I can have some tea. Maybe I can have ways to kind of like heal themselves and honor their transition and their moon every single month. So.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful response. They've all been fantastic responses so far. Yamile, I think that you're the last, and then I'm going to pass it on over to Sally for another question.
Yes, and the seed of the idea for part of the team, which is the story of Angela, who plays basketball in an all-boy team, came to me in 2015 when I was writing about a girl who played soccer. I mean, it was a long journey for that story, because I'm actually now revising the novel that was born of that main idea. But then when I was thinking of my story for the anthology, I kind of adapted it from soccer to basketball and kind of kept the same center girl who, when children are young, their games are not gendered as much. And they have the same interests, and they all play together, and there's no distinctions. But something happens when puberty hits or the period comes, and then all of a sudden there's that division, and our society is still so binary, boys and girls, and there's so many children that are lost in the middle. And it's like children have to take this, like the path forks out, and they have to choose, or they have to keep going on the path already assigned to them. And sometimes it's like with the narrative that we give them as a society, when a girl gets her period, now you're a woman. And imagine a 10-year-old being told that she's a woman. I remember being always so shocked, and it would hit me so hard because my mom was a woman. I was girl. And so even though this experience of Angela had, getting her period in the middle of a game in front of everybody, and kind of being discovered that she's a girl all of a sudden when she's been a girl all along, it didn't happen to me personally, but I remember the feeling of being told, oh, now you're a woman and all your interests have to change, or you have to, change who you are when you want to be playing with the boys, and, and being an active child. And also I have my little agenda. I'll confess, I wanted to bring attention to the fact girls quit sports when they get their periods, and as puberty progresses, more and more quit. And there are many reasons. One of them is, they don't have access to a team for girls, or they don't have access to period products, and then and they lose the opportunity to get the advantage of all the wonderful things that sports bring with them. And so I wanted to show that. And also I wanted to show that a period always comes when you least expect it, whether it's when it's Ramadan, or when you're working, or when you're, going to the pool on the first day of summer, when you're in the middle of a championship game. And that has happened to me. Like, it seems like every time there's something important in my life, I get my period.
Yeah.
And so even when I'm writing something that didn't happen to me personally, I've been in close enough situations that I can draw from that experience and those feelings. And also, we as writers, we're observers of people. And I'm a mom of 5 children. All my kids have been very active athletes. And I've seen girls playing my son's soccer teams who are incredible and inspiring, and how by the time they're 14, 15, there's the one girl in the team. One before it was, half and a half. It always hurts me so much because they play with so much grit, and they have so many hopes and dreams, and something biological sometimes cuts them off from achieving their goals when it shouldn't be that way. I feel like as a society, not only are we doing a disservice to girls, but also to all of society when Aida was saying misogyny really affects us all. I love that Saadia taught her son, because I feel like many, many times women are we have this opportunity to teach younger generations, and sometimes we perpetuate stereotypes and misbeliefs. And I think this book is an opportunity to open conversations for all children, regardless of their gender, to know about something that's as natural as the moon changing through the cycle of the moon. So your question, Jordan, was how we, we put our real life experience in fiction. And I think that's how I do it. And, we augmentate them when we write fiction to bring attention to things that matter the most to us. And also periods, when yes, periods are a central topic in the stories, but it's not the only topic. And I want to think that in all of the other in all of the stories, there was something that was greater, and then the period happened, because that's how it is in real life. We're human beings and we experience this, but we keep going with our lives. And I think it's important to show younger readers how to do that, because that's how they learn.
Can I add something real quick?
Of course. Yes.
So one of my books, A Place at the Table, which I co-wrote with Laura Chauvin, it has a mini scene, not even a full scene. There's just a mention of one of the main characters has got a pad in her purse or something like that, or she, it's been a while. So there's literally a little bit. And I saw multiple reviews online with trigger warnings. And when I read that was one other, it kind of like fell into place for me, how we as society kind of, I don't know what to call it, like regulate ourselves, silence ourselves. Why is this a warning? Even if your child is young and has not had their period yet, they should still know about it. They shouldn't feel like, oh, what is this? And why am I going through this? Or so it's just, that was one instant which really bothered me. So
it's so strange to me, because I see, like when teeth start falling off at the beginning of elementary school, that's the rite of passage that we know the child, is growing up. And a period is the same thing, but it gets demonized that way. And also because it gets sexualized, and anything that has to do with sex is a taboo. And it's scary to think that, our little children, like are experiencing something that is even tangentially related to sex.
That's a really good segue into the broader world of middle grade, which typically is 8 to 12, can go a little bit younger, can go a little bit older. But such an important time for reading, for growth, for so many things. And I would love to hear what some of like the most important ingredients are basically for you when you're speaking to that age, and how you balance just what Saadia was just talking about, you know, reviews who might think like, oh, that's too much for this age group. They're not ready for that yet. When I think we all know it's usually the parents that are saying that and not the actual kids. But yeah, talk just about speaking to that age group and what makes a successful middle grade book. Should we go round table again, or sure? Hilda, we'll start with you up in the
Free
top.
for all.
So the first part of your question is an important ingredient, I think, right? And what we do. So I think that the most important thing is honesty. Mm-hmm. And, you know, kids are at that age group are learning so many things, you know, about the world around them, about themselves, about relationships with others, about their own bodies. And as adults, I think it's our role to kind of guide them towards knowledge. And the best way to do that is to be as honest as possible. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to, you know, write pornography for the kid or anything like that. Like, you want to write about what is important to them and what is important to you. And, you know, I just think that it's really, you know, kids are intelligent and they know when we're, you know, sort of pandering to them and when we're lying to them and when we're not, you know, really telling them what's up. So I do think that it's very important to be as honest as possible. And in terms of the reviews, you know, I just think that we need to do what we think is best. And I would speak to my readers in the way that I would have spoken to my own children when they were that age, you know, in a caring and honest and open way. And, you know, some people might not like it, and hopefully most people will, but we can't really, it's hard to please everybody all of the time. So all we can do is do what we think is best and put out a product that we're very proud of and that we think is, you know, speaking our heart, and hope that the readers find it and read it and connect to it.
Mm-hmm. Hope that the readers find it, or the right librarian or somebody gets it into their hands.
Oh,
yes, yeah. Bless those librarians. Yeah. Aida, can you speak a little bit? Same question.
Yeah. I adore middle grade. I have to just say, like, because it's such a transformational moment, others have said. And periods, I'm especially passionate about. And it's kind of an Easter egg for me. In every single one of my books, I've put in a mention of periods.
Yes.
Because I have to. I mean, the ones, not the picture books, but the middle grades, because I want to just normalize it. So, and but for me, the secret sauce for middle grade is voice. And I think a lot of people who try and write middle grade and can't get that middle grade voice, you can tell, and kids can tell. But when you can get the voice, meaning, like as Linda Sue Park says, the word choice, rhythm, and punctuation of a middle grader, then I think that your books can be very, very successful. So, or your stories can be very successful. So I think that's a secret ingredient. And I fall in love with books that have powerful voices. Yes. And then the other, as far as the other part of the question, you know, I've experienced a lot of backlash. My books are banned, or The Moon Within and Land of the Cranes have been banned because they are critiques, right? Like Land of the Cranes is a critique, but The Moon Within is a critique of colonialism and critique of patriarchy. And it's also, there's a gender expansive child in the story, on top of it being about about menstruation. Somebody gave back a book, The Moon Within, to somebody who had given it to them and said, I can't have this book. It's about sex. And so, and I've gotten hate mail and threats and all sorts of things because of the content of the book. And so, I don't mind going on Goodreads. I don't do it very often because, I've already read all of them, but I like to read the reviews and go like, whatever, dude, that's your opinion. But I know that the letters that I've received about The Moon Within from adults to children have been so powerful and have done the work that I hoped that The Moon Within, what I hoped that it would do. And so reviews are important, and they do help spread the word. But when they're not good, on some level, I have to, just consider the source, A, and B, understand that, as somebody mentioned earlier, that you can't please everybody. So, okay. But we get to sneak in some really powerful information and hopefully touch and transform lives through our work.
Yes.
Fantastic. Saida, you mentioned that you have your series, you're getting a spin-off from a boy's perspective. One thing that I hear from parents a lot is like, oh, well, this is a girl book. But I would say the majority of the time, if you actually just put the book in front of them, the boys don't care, or you'd hope that they don't care.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about writing for middle grade boys, or for everybody.
Yeah, it's hard for me because I'm not a boy, so to get into the mindset of boys is really hard. I don't understand them. I don't get men, I feel like, a lot of time. So I wrote girls for the longest time, and especially Yasmin, because there's so many books in that series. And it has fans all over the world. And this was the number one question I'd get, but only from adults. No kid ever came up to me and said, will you write? They would ask me, because a lot of my books a lot of the Yasmin stories are based on kids asking for specific things or suggesting stories, because I need all the ideas I can get. So the boys would ask, can she play soccer? So Yasmin, the soccer star, came up. And can she do a science experiment? So Yasmin, the scientist, came up. Can she be an astronaut? So a pilot. I was like, so boys will suggest specific things that are their interest, but they never said, can you write a boy book? But so many teachers, so many librarians, so many parents would come up to me later, in an event and say, can you write about a boy? And I would get really annoyed at that. And I always had this answer, your boys can read a book about girls. Girls do that all the time, where they're reading books about boys. But when I got that for several years, I kind of had to take a step back, and my educational background is all business, and I try to think of my books as products that I'm putting out in the world. And so I was like, there's a demand, and I'm not fulfilling that. I'm not doing my duty in charge, just because of my own perspectives. And so I asked my publisher if we could do this once and see what happens. And if it doesn't do well, all the people who texted me and messaged me better buy this book now, because it's gonna be there. But overall, I think that it's in middle grade, especially. These are early readers, but I think I see it even more. I remember my son, when he was in middle school, he stopped reading books that had main characters as girls. Especially, he would read them at home, but then he wouldn't take them to school. And I asked him once, and he said, kids say things, and I'll read this one at home. I'll take that other one to school. And all of these things kind of they hurt my heart. I feel like we're like Yamile said, we're doing a disservice to a lot of people, to society in general, when we're sending these messages. But it took me a while to write my own first book about a boy. And that was a middle grade one. Yusuf Azim is not a hero, but he is so nice and friendly and empathetic. And I put a lot of feminine, so-called feminine qualities in him because I wanted boys to also feel like, you know, it's okay to be caring and kind, and they don't get it's okay to cry. He cries in that book, especially because some pretty awful things happen to him. And it's all part of, you know, my activism, and everybody I know over here on this panel we're all are doing our activism in whatever area that we feel is best suited to us. So I'm glad I get the opportunity to do that. But yeah, boys can read books about girls. It's not a big deal, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yes. Shout that from the rooftops. So we've got truth, we've got voice, we've got, you know, writing just for everybody. Guadalupe, what is your secret sauce for writing for middle graders?
Well, you know, this is interesting because I feel like I straddle the middle grade YA line all the time. Like Summer of the Mariposas, she's 15. So she is right there in the middle. I'm just leaving middle school, entering high school, but still with that, you know, nuanced identity. Somebody last week in the hallway in the residency said that they felt like middle grade was who am I and what's this world about? And YA is who am I in this world? Right? Where do I fit in? Where am I going? And what am I going to do with my life in this world, in this skin, at this time, in this place? I like to straddle that. I like to show students, I mean, young people, young women especially, who are trying to find their power, who are trying to find out not just who they are, but what they want to do in the world. But they're so young that they're still trying to figure out the world. Before you can figure out who you are in the world, you got to figure out the world. And so I like to straddle that. I like to nuance it. And so that's what I did with Summer of the Mariposas. That's what I did with Under the Mesquite. Estrella in All My Stars Denied, All the Stars Denied. She wants to be a hero because her parents were heroes in 1915. And here she is sitting in the beginning of the Great Depression and nothing to do to be a hero. And then she discovers these, you know, no Mexicans or dogs allowed. And she's like, oh, wait, there's segregation? What is that? And why are we segregated? And she puts a big target on her family because she's trying to be an activist, because she's trying to be a hero. She's trying to find her place in the world. And but she's 14 years old. So there you are. I like to straddle that. To me, that's the sweet spot. And one of the things my editor, Stacy Whitman at Lee and Low Books, 2 Books, says is that she wants more of that. She wants more of that because our middle grade readers really are sophisticated. They really are. They are so smart and they figured this thing out. And so when they pick up a book where a character is trying to not just figure themselves out, but figure out the world and then also figure out where they fit in, that's the sweet spot right there. So that's what I'm about. I'm about empowering girls and having them explore this beautiful world and who they are in it at a younger age, because let's face it, they can handle it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. That's such a good distillation of the two, of middle grade and YA. And we absolutely need more books that straddle that line, because middle grade stops at 12 and then YA starts at 14. So what is that middle grade in the middle?
That's that sweet spot that nobody's thinking about. And I love it because I have 4th graders reading Summer of the Mariposas. I get invited to elementaries, and then I get middle schools, and I get invited to 9th grade campuses who are reading the Odyssey and the Mariposas along with it. And so I've just committed that the series is all going to be straddling that line, because we need those books too.
Yes.
Fantastic.
We do need these books.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, we do need these books.
Yes, absolutely.
Yamile, I know you are. You have to run pretty soon, if I'm
Yes.
remembering correctly. If you have time,
And
tell
what
us your secret to middle grade, or your favorite thing about writing for middle grade.
I don't know if it's because I got stuck in that point of my life, or I'm, like Guadalupe said, I straddle two worlds. We speak two languages at home, and we live in a place where we don't practice the religion of the majority of our community, and so I feel like the person who is in intersecting places in the world, it resonates with me, and so I love to write about people like that. And I think young teenagers are right in that spot, because they're not little children, they're not grown up, and they don't know where they fit in. And I always like to think from the point of view of the misfit, perhaps. And for me, it's just exciting. I just love when I think of middle graders or middle schoolers. I think of their eyes and that spark that they have in them. And for me, what I try to do, even if I'm writing about difficult topics, I want to add a glimmer of hope in the end, even if there's not a happy ending immediately. I want to show that, yes, things are difficult, or maybe you just moved into a different country and you don't understand the language, or you got your period and you got kicked out of your team. But you know what? Things will get better. And I'm an optimist, and I always want to bring that message to children that things get better.
Yeah, so I want to add a little bit to that, because Yamile, you just hit the sweet spot for me too. That's one of the things I always tell my readers, because like I deal with cancer, death, divorce, immigration, and people who die because they're trying to immigrate. So there's all these really hard topics. And I tell my readers all the time when I go visit them, I will take you to the dark side.
Yeah.
Because bad things happen to people, to
Mhm.
good people. I will take you there, but I promise I'm going to bring you back to the light. I
Yes.
promise
I
you,
got
stick
chills.
with me. And so that's that hope. I'm going to bring you back to hope. Yeah. Thank you. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about middle grade, that we are all doing this work where we're trying to bring people out of the darkness into the light.
Yes.
The thing also about this age group is that currently these days, the last several years, these kids are so much more advanced than I know I was in terms of what they think should be done. They want to read the news. They want to interact with other people and have these discussions. They have their phones where they're learning about so much that I had no clue about it. At 12, I didn't know about wars going on, or climate, or politics, or women's issues. And the kids that I see, including my own daughter, who's 14, I see them so passionate about these topics and wanting to do something. Or at 12, 13, I just wanted to live my life and I didn't care about what was going on outside. I had my own issues. And
Yeah.
I love the fact that we are writing for these kids, because it means that our books can be that much richer and have talk about all those things, and not have to wait till we're writing for teenagers or adults before we can talk about those important topics, because they get it. They get it in a way that I don't think that the previous generations got it, and that's really cool.
I've heard lately that this new generation, they're called the honey badgers for a reason. They're going to change the world.
I love it.
And
I
I
love
want to
that.
thank everybody for being here, because you're all individually and collectively now, with Calling the Moon, changing the world, changing the narrative, and providing these very important stories, not just to kids, but also to parents like myself. It's incredibly important, because I'm going to have a daughter who is 11 before I realize what's going on. And so having these stories is immensely important. And I want to thank everybody here tonight. Hilda, Guadalupe, Saadia, Yamile, Aida, thank you so much for the book and for talking to us this evening. I know that many folks need to go, but before you leave, I would love to start with Aida. Tell us where we can find you online, where can we follow you? Where can we find your books?
I am at Aida Writes, and on my website, aidasalazar.com.
Yamile?
I'm everywhere at Yamile Saied Méndez on all social media platforms and my website. And note that I pronounce the Y like an SH, but it's spelled Yamile. Yamile Saied Méndez everywhere.
Saadia?
Just my full name together on Twitter and Instagram, Saadia Faruqi, and saadiafaruqi.com on my website. So I don't do any other platforms because they scare me, but Twitter and Instagram are kind of, they're okay. And I do a lot of giveaways for books, of my own books and other people's books. So I love to connect with people, especially on those platforms.
Amazing. Hilda?
So my website is hildayunisburgos.com, and I check Twitter and Instagram and Facebook like once every 2 weeks, but I do have accounts. Twitter is Hilda E. Burgos 1, and Instagram is HUnisburgos. And I don't remember what Facebook is. I think it's like, there's like a 12 attached to my name, I think, without the middle name. So, but it's easier to, I guess, find me through my website if you want to find out more about me. Thank you.
Guadalupe?
I am Guadalupe McCall at Instagram and at Facebook. So you can just look my name up, and I'll be like this. And so you'll know it's me. And on Twitter, I am at Gigi McCall, and my website is gigimccall.com, because I hope to one of these days make everything just Gigi McCall. So that's it.
That's amazing. Thank you once again. And for everybody watching, nobody knows this, but 2 lucky winners will win a copy of Calling the Moon. Yeah. I'm going to be sending out copies to 2 lucky winners. I've already chosen folks, so congratulations in advance, but there will be a post up in the Nest. Thank you to everybody who's watched us tonight. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here talking to you at all. So for your love of books and your love of the Nest, thank you. And keep an eye out next week for lots of more awesome features. We have a new reading challenge coming out, and be sure to join us this Sunday as we chat live with Nicholas D. Demizio, the author of The Gay Best Friend. So that's going to be such a fun way to end our June month here in the Nest. And I hope that everybody has a great weekend. Stay safe. Keep reading.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was lovely. Bye, everyone.